I think I'm here. I'm unsure. Hold on. I think I'm live. Okay. I think I'm here. I'm unsure. Hold on. I think I'm here. I think I'm live. I'm unsure. Hold on. Okay. I think I'm live. Okay. Peace, YouTube. This is Flipper and coming back to you today for some updates on the shenanigans in the Matrix. So check on in. Check on in. Hope everybody's well on this Sunday. As your Willy Wonka assistants had lost their goddamn minds, but can't stop, won't stop. Check on in. Okay, I'm just making sure. Can you guys hear me okay? Hey, I'm sorry, zombies. I had went live on my Zoom, but we'll be back on Zoom tonight. So I'm sorry. I just realized, hey Dalmache, hey everyone. Peace, peace, peace. Come check on in. Okay. You can hear me? Good. Good, good, good. Okay, perfect. Hey, my lovies. All right. Okay. So, we'll wait. Last time we had an alien or a bot intervention. We had a bot intervention. It could have been ET based with old Chinese lexicons with a message. So, I want to thank everyone who transcribed the messages from the alien who was in our chat. We didn't know if it was a bot. We didn't know if it was some sort of intervention, but it seems to be that we got a message from it. So we'll talk about that as well as when we start. So check on in. Hey George, Money Earning Mount Vernon in the motherfucking house. I love Mount Vernon, y'all. Big up to everyone who doesn't know. I'm from New York, originally from Mount Vernon, New York. That's why I have a little bit of a fetish for Bronx, um, the Bronx and Mount Vernon brethren. Because my mama and daddy told me to stay out of the Bronx, and as many of it creates a little bit of a fetish for us good girls in Mount Vernon. So big up to all of you from hey. We got occult lectures in the house. Peace, peace, peace. That's Brother Panic's people coming from the underworld. Yes. So I'll wait until everyone checks in. I have some updates, some information. I know sometimes I wait. Usually, hey Susu, Boogie Down Bronx. Uh, we'll talk about a couple of things. Pelham is right next door. We got a lot of Westchester County people in the house. For those who don't know who are not from New York, we have the surrounding boroughs, surrounding cities and towns that surround New York City. Westchester County is a county right outside of New York City. So you got New Rochelle, Pelham, Yonkers. The Latinos like to say Jonkers. You got White Plains, New York, which Candace Owens is from. Mamaroneck, Westchester County? Yeah, that's a little further up, right? Mount Vernon. Where else? What's next door? Yonkers, New Rochelle, White Plains, Pelham. Got the Bronx next door. Yeah, for those who don't know. So that's for those who are not quite aware of the New York kind of metropolitan area and the surrounding areas. And you got the boroughs of like Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, Bronx, Manhattan, um, you know, so Harlem. I can't forget Harlem because I went to school in Harlem. Pick up to our Harlem brethren. I went to CCNY, y'all. Yes, I did. That's how I came upon um, my Professor Jeffries. Many of you know, and he was best friends with Malachi Z. York. So it's interesting how everything comes full circle, right? So check on in. Okay. And then you have like Connecticut around those areas. So those and Jersey. So you have Jersey around New York, and then you have Connecticut. So a lot of Connecticuts and Jerseyites are kind of perceivably act very similarly to those from New York, if you ever meet them. This is just, extra information if you ever wanted to say that you knew things about New York and the surrounding areas of New York. Okay. So check on in, everyone. I'm gonna wait until we get to about 500. Okay. Um, I hope everything's well. Georgia's in house. A lot of New Yorkers are in Georgia. Do you realize that? There's a lot of New Yorkers that kind of did their migration to Georgia. They did it when I was in college too. Like when I was graduating high school, a lot of my peers went to universities in Georgia and Virginia. It's very common. Um, Virginia State, right? Look, okay. Detroit, I got love for Detroit. I love all of the most of the ever place, all the urban places. My ex is from Detroit, so I consider myself because I'm on their family tree now from the Blackfoot and the Cherokee. Big up to those from Detroit. I love Detroit. And it's so weird that people are shocked by that. I was so well received by Detroit. I love the people. I love the culture. I love being family members now to my northern family members in the United States in Detroit. So big up to Detroit D-Town. I have such a good time when I'm there. I love hanging out with my ex's family because that's my family. They have such good times. It's the first time I ever went to a fish fry was in Detroit. I had such a beautiful American, like a real good, healthy American experience. So if you've not been to Detroit, I love Detroit. Okay. All right. So we're almost there to, no, we're not almost there to 500. Okay. I'm just reading the comments. So we're gonna kind of talk about a couple things. Updates about the Wolfman, the Wolf people, the Wolfians, the beings that are here in this neck of the woods that I'm at. I think the message also that was on the last Zoom, the last live was connected to the wolf beings. And I've talked about like I came back to the States and I ended up staying somewhere where there was like telepathically I was getting a lot of energy from like wolf type beings like lichens, what you call lichens, right? That's the term you would use, matrix term, the lichens or the wolfies or the the wolverines or what else you call them? Like I don't know, the canine beings. I mean, they were very strong energy. And even with the message that was given from that alien being on our last live, which was really crazy because we were trying to get rid of that being. We were trying to erase everything they said. We were trying to get rid of it. They just kept coming back. And they had a message in like old Chinese talking about the canine, reminiscent of the dog. So, we kind of transcribed it as maybe being connected to the dog star. Sorry, my lip gloss is slipping and shining. The dog star, the dog beings, because it talked about dog teeth, and teeth also means wisdom. So I personally took the message as a telepathic message that was being transcribed by the alien being in the chat that was talking to or acknowledging that my acknowledgement of the wolf beings or the lichens or these type of Anubis kind of beings was legitimate. That's how I took it. And since then, since the last life, I've driven in the backwoods of this area, and I noticed that a lot of the townspeople had images on their barns of wolf. You know the old Wolfman? Anybody know, remember the Wolfman, that old Wolfman, like in the 1950s, the old harsh, remember the old Frankenstein movies? You'd have to be of a certain age, or you'd have to have mothers or grandmothers or grandfathers who watch like the old black and white movies, the old classic, Frankenstein and Wolfman movies. Well, the Wolfman was literally on the barns of like several different houses driving on this back road. So it gave me confirmation that this type of being, this kind of lichen being, this kind of dog being is here. And also because I have my pack, I have my dogs. Many of you know I travel with 4 dogs. I love them. My 4, really beautiful canines. One of them has a black and white eye, which is my Siberian Husky, and she sees through the woods. And she would just sit there sometimes at nighttime, just staring intently in one direction, not wavering, not moving, not barking, not growling, just looking intently at something, almost like she was having an interface with these wolf type beings. Anyway, I think we're at 500, y'all. Maybe I'll dedicate some time if I get more messages from the Anubis. Remember, I talked about Anubis being the being that we go through to be weighed against weighed with the concept of weighed. Our soul is weighed against a feather, like the concept of Ma'at. And that's how we transition. That's how we get qualified or judged or verified in order to go to the next dimension or to be able to be transferred outside of the dome. Okay, so we'll talk about that next time, y'all. Hey, AJ. So big up to the Anubis in the mother freaking house. Okay, we acknowledge the wolf beings. We aren't discriminatory in this YouTube channel. We accept all beings as long as you're respectful. The alien came in talking about all kinds of things, just came in like bottom. So we just treated you as you came in. But we got the message, and hopefully that message is very reminiscent of what the message you were trying to give. Okay. So let's check on in, y'all. So as we were talking about, I wanted to speak and shout out because officially, and I can say this with 1000% confirmation, Wakanda's in the motherfucking house. Wait, hold on. Don't catch me. I don't like drinking out of plastic. It's the only water bottle I can get when I was out today. So we have Wakanda in the house, and if many of you know, I talked about, I don't know if many of you saw Black Panther. So put a 13 if you saw Black Panther. Did you guys get it? Oh, hold on now. Live is, I'm looking at the comments. Hold on. Let me go back to the comments. Did anyone put a 13 if you saw Wakanda or saw Black Panther? Okay. Put a 13 if you saw Black Panther. I just want to get an idea of who's in the chat and speak to you regarding Wakanda and what I'm perceivingly calling Wakanda. So, oh my God, all of you saw it. This is great. Okay. So you know what I'm speaking of. Okay. So Wakanda's in motherfucking house. What am I talking about? The beings that I talked about, the black. Now, when I say the word black, y'all, you know I'm being facetious. I perceivably think people with darker skin are melanated. I utilize the terminology because it's a terminology that's been used to describe a specific type of Negro type of being. Okay. So when I say black ETs, do know I'm ODing like Norman Brogren, who wrote the book Ringmakers of Saturn. So I'm being really facetious, but I'm kind of just harping on something that has been hidden in the UFO and ET community. The UFO and ET community, a lot of them are ran by CIA, FBI, and governmental Deros organizations that control the narrative. They controlled opposition. They created a lot of the narrative of the UFO and ET experience so that they can make sure the narrative stays within the alignment of their agendas. So when you go into these ET groups or these UFO groups, and I've been part of it for over 30 years, many of you know this, Dr. Blair also was way before me, and had been connected to the community, but the community was not connected to him. And it shouldn't fool you or it shouldn't surprise you, because I've talked about the treatment of myself going into spaces where I was very much drawn to from having my own contact and being met with hostility, huge amount of bias, being called, and hopefully close your children's ears when I say this. I have to explain this to you because you're going to understand and understand that there has been a consensus that has been purposefully promoted to keep a certain type of people out of the community, and also to deter any sort of people who are having connection with beings that look reminiscent of what you perceive to be Negroes or brown or black people on this plane that you would be connected to. So, I talked about, coming into the spaces of the UFO community being called nigger, monkey, ugly, stop coming and act. You guys already take over everything. Why are you coming trying to take over space? I was met with a lot of hostility. And I think many of you know this over the years. I haven't been shy about detailing the hostility and bias. And why is this important? Because you have to realize when you're a contactee and you are in contact with beings outside of what we consider to be like our physical manifestation of humanoid, like a bipedal humanoid, a corporeal humanoid, you wouldn't have such prejudices because you would be able to fully differentiate between other species and humans. It's just like going into another country and you're an American and nobody speaks English, and then the one person, it doesn't matter what they look like, they could be Asian, they could be Latin, they could be, lunar, they could be brown. But if they speak English and you're outside the country, you automatically connect to them because you feel a connection to you to another being that has same and similar experiences and same kind of nationality. It's the same with the UFO community. When people are saying that they're in contact with whether it's reptilians, insectoids, forms of grays, zetas, tall whites, the Nordics, the host of types of maybe amphibian beings, you would automatically be drawn into less prejudice because you would further connect to your humanness because of it. But what's interesting is that you'll meet a lot of people in that group, in that those spaces that are highly prejudiced. They're saying they're in contact with multidimensional beings, but they have a very little tolerance for differences on this earth plane, people who look different than them. So I call them the psyop community. They are generally, they're based with and I don't say that people in those spaces aren't having contact or abductions. I very much think that a lot of the experiences you hear in these UFO communities are very true. When I say we have psyop communities that are generated by CIA and FBI and created by the governmental structures to be able to hold the narrative and also to archive and data harvest information on those who are really contactees, doesn't mean the spaces don't allow for legitimacy in contact. Okay, so I want to state that. So whether or not, so when people say, "Oh, Florburn, how do you tolerate being called?" I've been called names because I come from the UFO community, and they have really thickened my skin to the abuses and the narrative of beings that are saying they have experiences. But I call bluff on it, because if you were, you wouldn't have such strong prejudices. You actually would be less prejudiced because of it. Actually, having contact with interdimensional, extraterrestrial, or interterrestrial inner earth beings would actually pull you out of prejudices, because now you would be more human. Your humanness would be more detailed. So why do I express that? And why do I say Wakanda, Wakanda forever, Wakanda forever? Because now your Willy Wonka system, the orange one, your imperial leader, Trump, big up to Trump crew. Your imperial leader, Trump, has disseminated National Guards, I think, in 19 different cities, saying that he is going to cut down on crime and violence. But I am calling his agenda, what he perceivably is telling you he's doing that for, is literally a smoke and mirrors kind of movement. What he's intending to do is find the beings that I told you are here. The beings from Nibiru are now here, y'all, fully here. We had another so-called Asianic brown man accused of doing another crime. I think he was accused of what was it, macing someone? I forgot. Another Asianic brown entity. And this matters because the beings on Nibiru are melanated, meaning they're either caramel complexion, maybe a little lighter in hue, but they have Asianic features. They're reminiscent of very Asianic looking brown people, like what natives generally look like, or like people from the Solomon Islands, the natives, the indigenous from the Americas, which you see all over the place. Okay. They're very reminiscent of that. They have very Asianic features, but very brown skin. And they are trying to demonize them, because that is the beings that are that is the visual phenotype of the beings that are living and existing on Nibiru. Okay. Nibiru isn't a planet in the way that we perceive it. It is literally a type of ship that has planetary kind of aspects, meaning that it has astral turf, it has its own solarium, kind of like a green space where things grow. It has cities, and it's huge. Even in ancient times, they talk about this Mother Hubbard ship that literally was almost as big as the planet itself. And why it matters is because when Nibiru comes in, our space, and I talk about, it doesn't come from above, it's coming from below. That's why you're getting a lot of flooding, a lot of bellowing of water coming upward, because it is coming out of the oceans. Remember, the space, outer space as you know it, has always been conceptualized or projected as only being in the sky. But if you are of the mindset of knowing that we are surrounded by water, we're living in almost like a domed holographic um system where we are surrounded by water, water above and below, but up above us, you're seeing the water that's more petrified. You call it sky ice. You usually call it the firmament. It looks like blue ice. And big up to our family in Texas, because Texas had a lot of interesting water that was falling from the sky. I think it was around 3 or 4 months ago. Our Texans from Houston, can you verify this? We saw pictures of it. It was blue water coming out of the sky. That is melted sky ice, blue ice. When you hear of people talking about Antarctica and the ice that surrounds the ice wall that surrounds that area before they kind of go over inside of the real Antarctica, which many beings are living over there and are existing in their own civilization, which your Willy Wonka system does not want to tell you. And there's been wars that have been fought over there. That's a whole nother conversation that probably we should talk about in the future. That ice is very blue. And what happens is that when these Willy Wonka systems are trying to escape, they always try to, that's what the rocket launches are for. They're trying to permeate the firmament to see if they can a bellow, like get a hole into it and try to leave, because they're psychopaths. They're low vibrational. And actually, I found out from the Wakanda beings, from the Nibirians, that the beings that we're coexisting with, which I call holographic beings, or just basically like hybrid clones, as some of them are, they are dead beings, meaning there are echoes of beings that are coexisting, and their spirit is perpetuating a live feed that we're interfacing with, and we think that they're real. Let me explain this again. I hope you guys got that. They're like an echo system. They're beings that are echoing loud enough, like a poltergeist, where they're able to visually show up and have some kind of physicality to a certain degree where we perceive them as real. So we have echoes where also, this is their terminology. This is the Nibirians. This is what they communicated with me, is that some of these beings that are ruling what we consider to be ruling, they're echoes. They aren't even holograms. They're echoes, meaning they're beings that you six to say are non-corporeal, but they are able to take on like corporeal form, or to be hosted in clone bodies to be able to show themselves as physical or corporeal. Okay. So they're existing here, but they are literally holding the narrative because they aren't able to leave. I talked about the beings here being these like triple life sentenced OGs that are coexisting here. They're psychopaths. They're crazy. They've been so long in here. They refuse to try to up level and to evolve. So what's happened is that they created a world that caters to their nefariousness, caters to a world of death. That's why everything that we are celebrating in this holographic system is death based, meaning like you have dead presidents on your exchanging fiat system. You have a worshiping of death, like people jumping out of planes, always death activities, things that are always driving adrenaline, that is death based. You have beings that worship Halloween and death and dead bodies and dead corpses. You have music like, I know people like Ozzy Osbourne, but he was a death worshiper. He was a perpetuator of death. His whole life surrounded by death behavior, doing drugs, perpetuating people and worshiping people that have depreciated the body by doing harmful things, which is death behavior. All of these it's a death culture. This planet has been perpetuated by these echoes, which you perceivably call your governmental systems, and they've created an entire society that is based on death, and it perpetuates that in every part of its structure, its system, its governmental, system. That's why they're always, worshiping vampires. They romanticize vampires because that's what they are. In order to coexist here, a lot of these beings have to feed off of live, more soul-based beings. And I talked about, and I always tell you, the greatest movie. I know you don't like Muppets. You talk about the fact that I like Muppets. I grew up with Muppets. Big up to those who liked Jim Henson back in the days. That's what I grew up on. Is that if you ever go and watch The Dark Crystal, not only the movie itself, the old movie, but watch the series, I would tell you to watch it. It speaks to this. The Skeksis coming in as a parasitic, they look really disgusting. They got snot coming out their nose. They look like bird beings, like really dark beings. They're very unsavory. They're very non-hygienic. They come to the planet and they are able to take over the Gelflings, which are the native beings on the planet. They're very harmonic, based in nature, and they were able to manipulate them. And what they do in order to sustain their own life force is they feed off of the Gelflings by taking their life force, by sucking their energy, and then they drink it. Now you see another movie that kind of talks to this and speaks to this, which is Jupiter Rising. You guys remember Jupiter Rising? Or is it Jupiter ascending? Is it Jupiter rising or ascending? Hmm. Can you tell? I think it's Jupiter rising. Is it Jupiter rising or Jupiter ascending? Can someone remind me? I think it is. Hmm. Jupiter ascending, it doesn't matter. So in that movie, which is a great movie as a reference of what I'm speaking about, is in that movie you see actually see the Draconians, which I thought is crazy that they show it to you. Those are the big, oh, thank you, Golden Flame. Mwah. Thank you for my donation. Um Jupiter ascending, thank you, sea stars and sun stars. Okay. You actually see in that movie, well, if you see it, first look at the reptilian, the draconian with the wings, because that's the hierarchy of draconians or reptilians, usually denoted by lighter skin and having wings. The soldier type of crews, that's where we get this colorism from. I think I'm sidebarring, y'all. I'm going all over the place. I'm going to go into Wakanda, but I'm sidebarring because I'm giving you some interesting fun facts connected to what I'm trying to describe to you. Inside of, the reptilian hierarchy, it's based on looks, like visual looks. So the colorism that we experience that's being projected inside of our social systems does come a little bit from the draconian system, where in their system the lighter beings tend to have higher ranking the lighter they are, and also they have wings. Okay. In that movie, it was a darker reptilian being and he had wings, but that is very reminiscent of how some of the draconians look, or some of the reptilians look, that come from the Draco system. Okay, so that's a really good movie to watch. But inside of a Jupiter Ascending, you do see that they harvest a planet and they utilize, like how we talk about Loosh, but they actually liquefy the energy of the beings there and make it into a tincture or a elixir where it perpetuates their youth or their youngness. What I will say to you is that these ecosystems, these beings that are coexisting here with us, whether they're clones, hybrids, low vibrational beings that aren't ascending or getting higher, they're devolving. They utilize the energy of the life force of the soul beings in here. Now, remember Soul Train? Soul Train. There's another movie that has the Soul Train too. Soul Train is very reminiscent of the people, the beings that actually had souls. And I talked about this before. You say I'm judgmental, but it's not really judgmental. It's just basically giving you a visual and criteria of beings that have souls, okay? And that are from here. So soul beings that have souls have musical connection. Expecting the boys' schools to come up, but you were just sticking your wand and everybody, and then being nasty and utilizing people's wants and needs to further your career. And you are probably an asset to the CIA put inside of the community to do this. Anyway, but he doesn't have rhythm. So this is not only connected to soul beings, because I've seen people without what we perceive to be melanin who have connection to beat, to rhythm, rhythmic. Okay, so soul beings generally have rhythmic patterns. They're able to connect to rhythm, okay, to beat. It's the heartbeat. Everything on this planet, if it is soul based, is connected to the heartbeat of the planet. Okay, so Gaia, what do you call her? Earth Terra. She's been called by many names. You know, um, Kai. Ka, I think Ka is her name, Tiamat, very reminiscent of the being, but she carries a signature, a beat, heartbeat, and every single, the frogs, the insects, the birds, the ducks, the fish, everything carries a signature, and that means that they have a soul, meaning soul essence. Anything that doesn't match the beat, has no rhythm, is most likely cloned. It is geoengineered. It might come from generations of mud-fled children, which are incubator children, which are Cabbage Patch children, that have been created in laboratories initially and have been replicated to be able to create a stronghold of perpetual low fields of vibration and capped beings that keep the status quo of limitation to others that they're trying to be paroling over. Okay. Like bad cops. Okay. So anything that doesn't have rhythm, I already know is not a soul-based being. It comes from somewhere else. It's most likely non-soul based. It's most likely hybridized in some way. Everything connects, and it doesn't matter if it has light skin or dark skin, is soul based, okay? And when one has an imagination, when one is out, can think outside the box, when one creates their own lexicon, and doesn't have to colonize other people's mindsets, other people's ideas, copy other places, go to other places and take over, that's very soul based too. Soul based beings have a connection to source, which you perceive to be source, which is just basically uh, they aren't capped by the ideologies that are only perpetuated in this field. So they're able to draw from outside of the firmament. So they have creativity. You know, when there's this big thing going on, I don't know if it's TikTok or X, or it's on a lot of social media. It talks about people who haven't the ability to have inner thought patterns. They don't have their own inner dialogue. They have a disability of being able to perceptualize things. When you say, like, if I tell you to look and visualize a rainbow circle in your head, if you're unable to do that, most likely you are soulless, meaning you lack the creativity, the imagination that's usually reminiscent of beings that haven't a soul. You might just be a perpetuator or an echo yourself. Now that the Nibirians have let me know that there are beings here that are considered to be echoes, it now makes more sense that that's why they aren't experiencing any sort of karmic debt, because they aren't in themselves real. They aren't holding or casting a real connection or what we could consider to be a humanoid criteria, so that in the way that we would pay for crimes, they aren't experiencing that. So that's why we see them perpetually do things heinous, archaic, savage, remedial, and there doesn't seem to be a consequence because they aren't soul beings. They aren't real. They're just basically beings coexisting, projecting an imagery to us that they're existing, controlling the narrative of the environment because people are very non-self-aware. We're under heightened amount of mind control, and also nefarious ET groups have been working along with the hybrids and the beings that are maybe even soul based. I doubt, I say soul based very loosely, and been working with them to create technology to keep humanity under a constant state of hypnosis. So you aren't able to really get past for a kind of mindset, a consciousness, or you aren't able to up level yourself past the limitations that are being projected and being promoted in this uh, um, holographic world. Okay. So when we talk about that, we're going to talk about the fact that now I was made aware that why I call it Wakanda, because again, I met another melanated young lady again who is a Nibirian inside. And what's interesting is that I'm noticing that the scouts that they're looking for, that I personally think that Willy Wonka and your imperial king Trump is looking for, he's looking for the scouts, the men soldiers. Remember I told you months ago, many of you saw the video I had before the orb showed up in January. I was contacted by these, I didn't know who they were. They were males. Like, and remember I told you I got a phone call. It was right before Halloween. It was right in that time frame, and they let me know that they're here and we aren't to really interface. We're just going to watch. And males that were participating in things that were hurting and going against the rules and regulations of war, because in their world, war doesn't detail, like, women and children are off the that aren't allowed to be engaged in war, like, meaning that in their world, when they're in the art of war, women and children are protected and put aside, and the war is only between the soldiers, okay? But because we're being ran by a bunch of nefarious fembots, that most likely are they're very, archaic. They haven't any rules or ethics or morality. They tend to think that women and children are free game in the art of war, and they actually used women and children as a tool to fully sacrifice and to abuse a society if they're trying to take it over. You can see what's happening in Congo right now, where women and children are fully being killed and raped and murdered in the most heinous ways. You can see what's happening in Somalia. I mean, I'm sorry, in Sudan. I think Somalia as well is going through their own civil war. I think it's Somalia. Can anybody from Somali in here? Just to let me know. Um, well, Flashpoint, why don't you leave? If I'm not a contactee, why don't you leave? Okay. Goodbye. Okay. Thank you, Chan. Thank you, Chan. Um, Anybody from Somali? I just want to ask because I want to verify. I think Somali is also going through a civil war. And again, I talk about the art of distraction. This world, these echo beings, these hybrids, these nefarious beings that are coexisting here, your imperial masters, they love the art of distraction. So what they do is they will constantly say Gaza, 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 Gaza. Gaza Strip, Gaza genocide. Meanwhile, they're perpetuating genocides in all these other melanated countries without any sort of a mention of it. So I always say to you, it's very interesting that you have all these people protesting and talking about Gaza. And I think Gaza, what's happening in Gaza is heinous. And we know why it's happening is because, they want to create a whole, world where they have full control over the newly Middle East. Remember, it wasn't the Middle East, it was renamed the Middle East to give credence to beings living there that normally could not survive in those places that are so hot. So if you didn't have the Middle East and it was just considered to be Africa still, you would think it would be odd that fair-skinned people would be living there and be called Africans. So what they had to do, these are long-term people. They had to create a so-called takeaway from what you perceive to be Africa. They had to change it to Middle East, and then they had to put a whole bunch of mud flood people that were very fair-skinned. So it gives you the ideology that this was a place that would host beings that are very fair-skinned. Okay. If you ever live in the Middle East and you ever go to places, look how hot it gets. And if you weren't able to sit in the sun and tolerate the heat, I would call cap on you being a native being from there. A lot of this is, colonizers creating these new terminology, new worlds, and then acting as if you're stupid. If you don't have melanin, if you're not my skin color or darker, you're not native to those areas. I don't care where you live in the Middle East. Fair-skinned people in the Middle East, it is not true. That is a form of psyop. They have colonized the area, put beings in here, hybrids, Cabbage Patch, and other colonizing nations, and perpetuated a lie and renamed them and gentrified them so that you think they're something different, and that you wouldn't question why these beings are living there in those areas that were previously Africa. Okay. No shade but shade. Okay. So let's talk about what's happening in Sudan, Somali, Yemen, and over in the Congo. Okay. What you're seeing in Gaza is literally a George Foreman, what's his name again? What's his name again? The guy, no breathe guy. What's his name again? George Foreman. What's his name, y'all? I'm sorry. The guy who, the first pandemic, the one that ushered in the no breathing, which brought in a pandemic where you couldn't breathe. Okay. What's his name again? Can someone remind me of his name again? George. Um, Oh wait, Floyd. Thank you. Thank you, my love. Thank you. Thank you, Ree. Kiaya. Okay. So when we think of George Floyd, okay, so George Floyd is a terminology. They created an entire psyop with this man who, in my opinion, from what my research was, had died previously, several years previously, and they used this psyop false flag to create this whole narrative that and people are, so blindly saying they can't breathe, and then all of a sudden you usher in a disease that didn't allow you to breathe, that would allow you to be incubated. I'm just saying, what the way that they do the ritual is so masterful that most people without the ability to discern or having any sort of um you know uh, critical thinking capacity, they just would fall into the trap. The fact that people are sitting outside saying they can't breathe or dropping to their knees, it was very interesting to see how easily people are mind controlled. So now the whole concept of Gaza is another psyop. It's another George Floyd psyop. Palestinian, like Free Palestine, is another psyop, because literally what they're doing is utilizing the terminology, doing it as a ritual, perpetuating something while they're doing one perpetual ritual in the whole of Palestine and Israel. Over in Congo, in Somali, in Sudan, and over in Yemen, they are doing perpetual genocide, real genocide of more people. I mean, tens of millions of people are dying over there, and not one person has breathed a word. Isn't that amazing how they could do that? They could do total a bait and switch, make you look in one direction totally, make you totally hyper focus on Palestine, which was a issue for years. Why now would you pay attention to Palestine? Why now would you pay attention to this war and not to Congo, which has way more people dying, way more children and women dying and genocided by the same people who are perpetuating what's happening in Gaza? Just FYI. Okay, the same beings, the same Darrows that have control over the diamonds and the gold, go to the diamond district. See what type of people are selling only the people that are allowed to sell gold and diamond. Those are the same people that are responsible for what's happening in the Congo. Those are the same Darrows that are responsible for what's happening in Yemen. Those are the same beings that are responsible for what's happening in Somalia and also in Sudan to this day. While everybody's sitting over here talking about the genocide in one arena, in one place, they're totally uh, uh, um being cold and being fooled into thinking that that's it, because there is a genocide happening at a greater degree and no one's even talking about it. How clever and how smart that Willy Wonka works. Look how beautiful they've been able to psyop the population to make them pay attention to only one thing. You should know, if they ever make you look, why would, if Gaza was a thing and they're against it and they're really trying to make you hide it, why is it allowed to roll this long? Why? I'm not saying that Palestinians are not being killed. That's not what I'm saying. Why is that the only thing that people are hyper focused on? You gotta ask yourself that question. Okay. Because the very beings that are over in the Congo, in Sudan, over in the Americas, that your imperial master, Orange One, that is now sent out the National Guards, is trying to prevent you from having any contact with, or from trying to find the very beings that he knows are in tow and ready to extract their own beings off this holographic system, and also to try to deter them from doing any further damage to their own, what you perceive their own bloodlines. Okay, so let's go back to what's happening over in the United Fakes of America. Big up to the Imperial Master Trump, you orange god, you past life holographic perpetual echo. Now, after the Nigerians let me know that these beings, some of them were perceivably echoes, now it made sense that, even the terminology echo with the type of technology with the AI system, they put it in everything. They tell you the truth and they just put it in front of you. And then you realize, like, oh man, this is really connected to what they've been initiating with technology, like with AI systems, the echo system. They put it out there, they put it in front of your face, and they tell you it's something else so that it kind of lowers your resistance to it when it comes out later. Okay? So now you have black extraterrestrial Asiatic. What's it called? There's this wonderful YouTuber. She's really adorable. She's a Korean. She's kind of thugged out. I forgot her name. She always talks about, there's a terminology for it. What's it called? I forgot what it's called, y'all. It's a term for like Asianic brown people. It's like a term. And they've stopped using that term. They used to use it back in the days. Again, they they control the narrative, they call the people into seeing certain things, and they rename, they colonize, and they gentrify things so that you don't connect one part to another. Okay. So right now we have these Asianic scouts, brown Asianic scouts. And I think I kind of sidebar too far, saying that the old ET community, the ET community that's been perpetuated, created by the CIA, they make sure you don't talk about brown extraterrestrials. Actually, people have been scolded. I know people who get invited because, myself, Dr. Blair, and other contactees that are brown contactees that talk about contact with brown extraterrestrials, they don't get invited to these ET conferences. You think that's by chance? Why do you think that is, that when you go to these conferences, they don't talk about Asian extraterrestrials and they don't talk about brown extraterrestrials, even though they say that the extraterrestrials are kind of reminiscent of, and sometimes hybrid with, the type of DNA of the people that are, on that are seated on what you perceive to be planet Earth, right? How come you don't talk about that? How come you only talk about Nordics or Greys or are insectoids or some form of mantis, or you talk about the tall whites or other ETs, but you never bring up any of those. And people have actually been scolded for talking about any melanated ETs. And anyone who's in contact with melanated ETs isn't invited to any of these conferences. You would have to say in order, even Billy Bob, Billy what's his name? Bill Carlson. The only reason I personally think they even allowed him to be in the ET community, no, I have a whole concept of that, is because he talked about his contact with the Greys. And I told you that I believe that most people that are in contact with Greys are governmentally seated. Anybody, I've always questioned anyone who's having contact with Greys. I always note that they usually have some sort of nefarious connection to the government. They're government technology themselves. Literally, they could be technology that the government has seeded and perpetuated as a human being. It could be a bioborg. It could be a cyborg that we're seeing and we think it's a person. Or these are people being used to control a narrative and are heavily seeded with ideologies that would go in alignment with some of their agendas. Okay. A lot of the people that, especially if they were brown, that I knew that were contactees of extraterrestrial, they were alcoholics or drug addicts or both. So the Greys aren't connected to higher beings. I haven't seen it, and I've been a part of the contactee and abductee community for a long time, and I've seen a lot of different beings in contact with different kind of beings. But I noted that the people who tended to be in contact with Greys, who saw Greys, usually had low field lifestyles, where they were heavily on drugs or alcohol. And you have to ask your question, why would a higher intelligent being be in contact with someone who has really heavy addictions to drugs and alcohol? You got to ask yourself that question. Okay. Why are the Greys associated with a lot of people like that? And usually also the ET and UFO communities is heavy drug use and heavy alcoholism. No shade. But if you've talked to people who attend a lot of these conferences, the people who are speaking in tone, not all, but from what I heard and word on the curve from the people I know who attend these type of conferences, or people who are hosting or saying that they're contactees, they are heavily drugged, whether they do a lot of marijuana smoking, which messes with your ability to dream and also perceptualize things. People who are heavily drinking. One of the young ladies threw up on her way to go speak at the conference. They demonized her, which I felt was wrong, because I felt like, you wouldn't talk about a man like that. I don't agree with her going heavily into, inebriated and drunk and throwing up right before she speaks to a host of people who paid a lot of money to speak to her skill set and her awareness of ETs. I wouldn't see any higher being or any higher extraterrestrial, any higher vibrational energy connecting with beings that are so low vibrationally. This is my take. When people say, oh, they had to get high to get in contact with beings, I would say that those beings aren't higher. Okay? Because anything that is higher, that is outside, that is vibrating at a high frequency and high speed, wouldn't be able to engage with people that would minimize or compromise their body. They wouldn't do it. They wouldn't have first of all, they wouldn't have the capacity to contact you, because there'd be a differential in vibratory frequency. And also they wouldn't want to have a compromised human being to interface with, because you've already been compromised, and your integrity is already compromised. Okay. So let's go into the Wakanda beings and your Imperial Master Trump, and why he has disseminated the National Guard in 19 different states, because Wakanda is here. We now have intel. It's Nibiru itself, as the planetoid cannot come too close. It is coming up from the waterways. So what's happening is that you're getting a lot of flooding, you're getting a lot of weird activity, seismic activity. That's because Nibiru is coming close. But what's happened is that a lot of these so-called meteors that you're seeing, a lot of these weird lightning that seems like something is shooting down, these are literally beings being transported, or what do you call it? Like when you do like um when you're in a transporter room, like with Star Trek and so what they transport you, it's I could kind of say what's similar is like when you saw maybe in Terminator, when Arnold Schwarzenegger would show up in Terminator, and he showed up in like lightning and it would be like a electromagnetic kind of like plasma that surrounded him in a circle. If you notice, we're seeing a lot of these lightning balls. We're seeing a lot of this lightning that's bouncing and walking around that people are actually capturing on film. I call these like plasma transportation projectors. A lot of times it could be surveillance, like the plasma balls could be surveillance, but most of the time they could be transporting beings, and that's how they transport them through plasma, like electromagnetic plasma that sometimes shows up as lightning or as cause as comets. Okay, what they call asteroids or comets to you and I. Your government is not going to tell you that these are beings being shot down, but what they will do is, I could be crazy, right? I'm a trans frog. I'm a demisexual, right? You don't know. So why would your government all of a sudden start disseminating all of these different governmental troops all over their country if they didn't think something else was there? I'm calling bluff that they're looking to stop crime. They're looking specifically for these melanated Asiatic beings that are from Nibiru that are scouts. And not only are they scouts now, they're coming off of the ships, the mini ships, the smaller ships, the pod ships, the cigar shaped ships. They're coming off of those because those are the ones that showed up first. Remember, the orbs showed up as a form of surveillance. These are like kind of like surveillance kind of aerial spheres that are looking and locating certain places. Probably locating the sleeper cells that were the scouts that were already here, seated in the urban communities. Urban communities where the people are reminiscent of how they look phenotype. And let me explain for those who have a problem with me saying that the ETs have melanation. You know what's so interesting? You will go on another person's channel. You will watch a whole video about Nordics having blonde hair, blue eyes, being very ethereal, or fairies having red hair, or you'll watch something on grays and you won't ever question why the person says that they have white skin or they have blonde hair, and you won't question why they say they have gray skin. But as soon as you go on a melanated woman's channel and she talks about beings that are reminiscent and look visually more similar to her, or beings that don't look like you automatically say, why do you bring up color? Do you not see that you're suffering from forms of mind control and internal bias, that you have a problem with others having experiences that you can't equate or connect to, rather than saying, oh, this is interesting? If I go to a channel and they're talking about Nordics, I don't get mad and say, hey, why are you talking about white extraterrestrials? When I talk about the tall whites, why would that bother you? That doesn't bother you because you feel connected to maybe the visual of them, or maybe you think it's connected to you phenotype wise, so you don't have an issue with it. You only come on my channel to mention and constantly get gaslit because you're hearing about beings that don't look like you. This is why I call you one of those fake ET enthusiasts. You only are connected to those things that are totally out of your visual scheme and reference, or those who look like you. It frightens you to your core that there are melanated ETs that could be walking around here. So when you treat them nasty, when you grab your purse a little harder when you're walking down the street, when you go to stores and you treat melanated people lesser, when you follow them around stores acting like they're all thieves, when you make judgments about them being lower, mentally and psychologically, it bothers you that there could be beings that with higher technology, higher intellect, higher ethereal connection, and it bothers you because you have such internal bias and prejudice that you have to verbally come on my channel and speak about how uncomfortable and why I shouldn't mention color. Do you understand? These ETs I'm talking about, why do you think they contact melanated people? Okay, because we're seeded by those who we're connected to. If visually I'm in contact with beings that are very reminiscent to me physiologically, it's usually how it is. It means I'm seeded by those beings. That's probably they're connected to my bloodline. They're connected to me that way. That's why some other people get connected to beings that are connected to them genetically, and I would be connected to these. Wouldn't it make sense? Okay. So please refrain from coming here and saying you don't see color, okay, because that is a gaslight to brown people, because only lunars say it. Nobody else in the spectricon Latin people don't say it. Brown people don't say it, Asiatics don't say it. They don't say that. It's a socially engineered response to an internal bias that needs to be culled or needs to be it's like a form of internal guilt that comes out, and that's why people say everyone sees color. Okay. If I'm wearing a brown skirt and I'm wearing a green top, obviously I wouldn't wear a striped top with my green skirt because I wouldn't feel like the colors match. Okay. We see color and there's nothing wrong with it. Colors all have different spectrums of frequency. Okay. When you look at the color chart, each of the colors has a different frequency. To say that you aren't in connection or haven't any acknowledgement of color means that you are probably devoid of even the soul. Because if you don't have a connection to knowing that different colors mean and have different functionalities vibratory wise, I would call you someone who's soulless. So please don't come on my channel. If this does not resonate with you and you feel like melanated beings makes you feel scary and it makes you, lock your doors more at night because you're scared that the melanated ETs are coming here to get you, then go to another channel where people speak more in the language or with the beings that are more reminiscent of you. This conversation isn't for everyone. And because you're hearing about beings that are in contact with certain people does not mean they're nefarious to you. Okay? To accept that I can go to another channel and hear people who are having contact with Lyrians and lion beings, why would I get mad at them for talking about it? Or the color of the different hairs of the lion beings, or the physiological makeup, or the physicality of them. Why would I get mad and go to their channel? I just wouldn't go to their channel if I don't resonate with it. Okay? You are going to change and try to bully me into stop talking about melanated ETs. This is why you are having the issue that you're having right now. If you have fear about it, maybe you should change the behavior or your mindset or your biases. A lot of people are under mind control and they don't know. We all are under a form of mind control. It's not just one group of people. Okay. So you shouldn't feel bad that you're under mind control. Just acknowledge it. Try to, cultivate your mind a little differently and be more receptive to other people having different experiences, even if it's not connected to you genetically. Okay. The world is not only about one group of people. Okay. I know that the colonizing on the planet has made everybody feel like it's only about them, but no, it's everybody has different experiences and different interface. And I'm talking about the beings that are from Nibiru. And the beings from Nibiru are melanated and they have a very Asiatic features. Okay. And how do I know this? Because I've been in contact with them for years. Okay. And there are many different people talk about being in contact with these beings. And with the Andromedans, which I talk about all the time, which are melanated women that have coils in their hair. And these are more like what do you call like very strong based women society. Okay. So, they engage with the society. They don't really interface. They don't interfere. They generally will survey it and watch. They like to watch all angles. Okay. And they have seeded their Eve in a lot of the women from the French Caribbean, from the Caribbean actually, and into New Orleans. A lot of them have the bloodline because that is the teachable bloodline. Okay. The one that seeded all witches with the knowledge and the ancient knowledge of who created witchcraft was Teachaba. She is the Andromedan that you see the image of. She's the one who seeded witches with their information today. So all Wicca was created by Teachaba. She was the one who created that structure of occultism, or of spirituality. Okay. Okay, that was Teachaba. And you can look in historical accounts. That's why they try to kill everybody and hang all the women that were practicing what Teachaba taught them. And once Teachaba left that area, she went into New Orleans and then became magically what you consider to be Marie Laveau. Okay. And she seeded what we perceive to be modern day voodoo. And obviously the seedlings of hoodoo. Okay. So, you could go back to my videos years ago, see where I came up and I surmised this information. So, many of these different types of extraterrestrials we've kind of associated them with maybe um, spiritual beings, which you perceive to be spiritual beings or supernatural beings, but they're all interfaced with some layer of extraterrestrialness or interdimensionalness. You know, they come from other worlds and they seed ideologies, certain kind of mindsets, certain kind of consciousness, and kind of seed it into a certain population. Generally, they seed it within their own seeded bloodlines that they seed. They put their DNA in specific types of beings and they perpetuate that information throughout those bloodlines. Okay. So let's go into the beings that Trump is trying to big up to Trump. You know, the orange one, I am really amused, y'all. You know what I'm amused is that he is basically being ran by an AI nefarious satanic order. And what's interesting is that he doesn't hide it anymore. Like it's not being hidden. It's like mother freakers, I don't like y'all. I'm trying to kill everybody. Now, remember, there's different types of Trumps too. I actually like the one that was from New York and was really quite balanced, that helped a lot of people of color and was really balanced back in the days. I really like that version. I don't know what clone that was. What version was he, like 3.2? Like, you know, 3CPO? What version of clone was that? That was the clone that I really appreciate. He was kind of funny, you know, kind of cute in a very quirky kind of way. I really appreciate that Trump. But this one, the High Hitler one, the one that's basically ran by the Satanist system, being ran by the Darrows, and he's not hiding it. This one is very interesting, y'all. I don't know that I'm feeling him because now he's just basically showing his Ross clot. He's going out disseminating his soldiers of mass destruction. And I would say this, y'all, for the urban communities, wherever he disseminated these so-called National Guards, I would be very careful because remember, they have these super soldiers and also they have this technology where they have cyborgs that are looking like humanoids. So for all the men, especially men, because they're really going after you because you are the soldiers, a lot of you and the Nigerians, I'm talking to you that are hiding and you're listening to this message. Obviously, you would know because you have technology and you're probably able to see these beings where most can't see it. But I'm talking to the urban men who are living in these cities like Chicago. Oh, where do you send it to? Chicago, New York. Where do you send it to? Washington, D.C. These might be cyborgs mixed in with humanoids in the National Guards. I would be very careful. They're able to see through your outfits. Thank you, my love. Thank you. Thank you, Gen X survivor. I know, right? Surviving Gen X. I appreciate the donation, 777. Um, these cyborgs can actually see through your clothing. They can see through your mind. They can read your thoughts. They can read your phone. I would be careful. I would have firm. If you out here in these streets, in these urban streets, and you were thuggish ruggish, and you're out here and they're sending out the National Guard, some of these are going to be cyborgs. They're going to be able to see in your phone. I would have a Fahrenheit, your phone in a Fahrenheit. I don't even know if that'll work because these cyborgs have high X-ray vision. They can see in your phones. They can activate your phones. So if you're going to go out, I wouldn't bring your phones on you, not your real phones. I would bring beater phones, okay? And I would make sure I be careful where your children are walking or going because they can be able to read directions. If your children have phone, they will geolocate your child based on your phone's location. These are cyborgs. So personally, this is my opinion. I think your Imperial Master, the orange one, has disseminated National Guards mixed with some cyborgs in there to find the Wakandans. Wakanda forever. And you notice we talked about the X. You don't realize that the Wakandans, what was the sign they made? They made the X. Okay. So remember, I made the whole connection to X is the generation that's going to be plucked up and ascended outside of this firmament. Everything is reminiscent of X. So also Wakanda, you know, it says X, planet X, you know, X marks the spot, Exodus, you know, so do know that I'd only put that warning out, and only certain sun stars are going to be able to hear this message and respond and be able to maybe to acknowledge that this could be a plausibility. But we are not working anymore with just humanoids, y'all. I know that you come to this channel with the awareness that we are very much in a world of AI that is cloaking itself in everything. It is able to transpose your information from your head and be able to register your thoughts. It is highly, highly, because remember, they've been chemtrailing everyone for the last 15, 20 years. Chemtrails have a level of nano fibers. Some people are allergic to it where it causes skin irritation. You see the actual fibers, the metal hanging out your skin. But most of you have been breathing and inhaling this certain level of material for a long people time. And we talked about this many years ago. If you watch my channel for a while, I talk about the nanotubes that people that were utilizing your cell phone with the blue lights and the nanoparticulates that goes into your skin, and it creates these nanotubes that eventually takes over and hijacks your brain. That's why now when you use your cell phones, if you think something, your brain, your phone will start advertising it to you. It's actually using your body as a high fiber optic system to register your thoughts and transpose them on the technology that you're choosing to walk around with and give them information about you so that they can survey you from a biological standpoint. Okay, so it's very important for you to understand and understand that now that you, if you've not cleaned your body of metals, if you have tattoos on you, if you've not gotten organic, vegan tattoos, which I don't even know if even safe anymore after we've had that conversation, you have tons of nano in you. So if you have tattoos, if you know that the ink matters, a lot of people I ask, many years ago when people were all socially engineered and everyone wanted to get a tattoo and you didn't know why, you were being mentally mind controlled and perpetuated and promoted to have tattoos. That's all nano, that's black goo. So that is also why a lot of people are working as fiber optics and relaying messages out into the ether that these beings, your governmental systems, your imperial majesty, is able to utilize the information from your mind to be able to survey you and to keep that data so that they can create more biological weapons to further make you sick, further make you less cognitively aware, and eventually take you into the smart city so they can either harvest your organs, feed other humans to you, make you eat bugs, or utilize your children as loosh for perpetuating their bloodlines post pole shift. Okay. Is everybody here? I'm very awake. I'm sorry. Am I bothering you? Please put a like on the video because I'm going off, y'all. If this is too much information for you, I would say don't come into here because sometimes I go a little far and it could be a little frightening. Okay, but I always feel like as a Sagittarius, triple times, I feel like knowledge is power. You can't change what you don't acknowledge. And if you don't acknowledge what your Willy Wonka systems are doing to perpetuate death culture upon you and your seed, then how could you make it any better? Okay. They've been doing this for the last 15, 20 years, probably longer than that. That's as far as I can go. Okay. But they've been doing that and that. So I always say, people say, well, you talk about this. What can you do? Clean your bodies as much as you can. If you're living in uh a heavily chemtrailed city, move. Don't complain or walk around with an umbrella and a mask. I mean, listen, do something. There's nothing you could do. I would walk around if you in a heavily chemtrail place, you shouldn't have your nose breathing that in because you know that those nanofibers are going straight to your brain. Or do a cleanse all the time. Oh, thank you, if it's travel. I love you, Fleur Bro. Isn't Washington D.C. bankrupt and isn't it sovereign territory like the Vatican and considered to be foreign territory? Yes, it is. Didn't they take the DC off of it though? Isn't it called? Did they take the DC? I think you're absolutely. Thank you for the donation, my love. I think they took the DC. Can you guys tell me if they took the DC off of it? I know we have Washington State. There was somebody who said something that they took the DC off of it. Okay. Um, and I always say this, if you think that I'm crazy, let's talk about the very people. Hold on, y'all. Oh, thank you for my donation, my love. Thank you, Lorraine. Thank you, Fleur Bruin. I appreciate your info. I really resonate deeply and have learned from you for many years. I just wanted to show how to appreciate much love and protection. Oh, thank you, Lorraine. Bisous, bisous. Um, so when I talk about the things about the nano, I'm going to kind of go because I'm going to go more into the Wakanda beings. I'm going to talk about what they're doing here, what their plans are, some of the information that I have from them. Hold on. Okay. I'm going to talk about why. how you can kind of vet out some of this information and say, well, Flurburn, you're going too far. You're saying these things and you have no proof, and there's no connection to the nano and it really hijacking people. I would say to this, I would say this to you. Look at the very people who have more fiat, who are living the best lives, and who have more control over your planet. I look at who's perceivably the wealthiest people right now on the planet. I look at them and I look at their religious, because some of them come from religious, like either it's Islam or it's Judaism. Okay. I look at what their people do religiously. One thing I notice that their women do is, what do? They cover their hair. Listen to me, y'all, because when we talk about me being paranoid, are you saying I have a certain level of sharing things that are not true? I got to give you some proof in the pudding, because you got to look at the ones who have more control and the ones who are perpetuating all these laws and regulations and doing things to you, but their people are not in the same situation, not as vulnerable technologically, and they're doing things to keep their people safe. Do you notice that the women of Islam, they all cover their heads with hijabs? Okay. So when we think about the Middle Eastern countries, the women cover their hair with hijabs. Okay. These are where all your wealthiest sheiks come from, right? A lot of places that are Muslim who are very hyper wealthy. I mean, when I say wealthy, I'm talking about wealthy beyond measure. Okay. What are the things that their women do? They cover, not only do they cover their hair, they cover their entire face. Now you would say, oh, that's to be chaste, that's religious, there's religious doctrine, there's religious information that talks about why the women should do that. Do you realize that a lot of times with religion is a control system, and also it helps to navigate and narrate certain kind of behavior that will protect or will leave people more vulnerable. Okay. So when you look at the women of the Middle East, very beautiful women, big up to our Iranian women. Big up to our women of Sudan. Big up to our women of Somali. Big up to our women of who else? Iraq, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt. These women wear hijabs, right? What does it do? It protects their face and their hair. Religiously, yeah, it may have a reference to that may be a reference to the religious doctrines, but what does it do in a society where when you're being heavily rained upon with nanotechnology? It will protect you from those forms of technology going into your hair, your skin, and you breathing it in. Look at the Judaic women, the Orthodoxy Jews, the women Hasidic Jews. Big up to the Hasidic Jews. I grew up, my uncle had a brownstone in Brooklyn. I grew up practically in Brooklyn all the time. My parents had a place in Brooklyn at one point, Park Slope. What do you notice about the Jewish women that are Hasidic? Not only do they not have their hair exposed, they shave off their hair and put wigs on their hair, the same texture as the hair that was growing on their head. Now you say to yourself, why would they do this? Religious and doctrines that say there's a reason for it. No, what I'm telling you is that, remember we talked about hair being a antenna. If there are people who have an overstanding that there would be technology that would use your hair against you, and that your hair can be used to manipulate or cause you to think a certain way, or exposure, obviously, to nanotechnology that can go into your head could be an issue. Why would certain people be wearing things to wrap their hairs, including the men? Do you not notice that the Hasidic men, the Jewish Orthodoxy men who are Jewish, cover their crowns, the most vulnerable part of your head where you can be utilized for mind control? You do not notice that, right? So the very society of the people who have the most wealth and control in our holographic system are utilizing forms of protection that people just think is religious, but you don't realize it's technological protection. They aren't eating the same foods either. They eat kosher and parv and also halal. They're not even eating the same food that you eat. So they have protected their food so that they aren't commingling their eating with the same chemicalized, indoctrinated, hybridized food that they serve you and I. This is all for you, for their benefit. So they have separated themselves physiologically, have themselves covered and protected from nano spraying. Okay. They protected themselves from being infiltrated from the same food that you would be eating from a grocery store. So they eat totally different. They have whole stores and markets catering to parv and kosher foods, right? Thank you, Cole Ledger. Thank you. Thank you, my love. Okay. They're not eating the same foods. Even as going as far as when you go into Brooklyn, big up to Bed-Stuy, our Brooklyn Jews that are in the house that are listening to this, because I know what I'm talking about, right? Why don't they go to the same hospitals as you and give you their blood and let you have access to their blood so they can use biological weapons on you? They don't do that. They have their own hospitals. They don't even go into mainstream or private hospitals where the main population goes. They have their own hospitals for their own people, the Jewish people. I'm not mad at them. I actually think that's smart because you're not allowing another group of people to have access to your blood. Do you get where I'm going, y'all? It's almost like they know what's going to happen. Let's go to the Amish. You don't notice that the Amish come from the same neck of the woods that the others came from too in World War II. And they created all these societies, these Amish, where they surrounded themselves in places where there's no technology. They're totally surrounded. They're only utilizing their own structure, their own resources, their own growing their own food. They don't interface with anything that we do to them. You don't think it's odd that they created a whole society with no technology, the very technology that is hurting you and I to this day? So who's gotten a heads up? What kind of ET groups have gotten a heads up where they knew that in the future that there was going to be a time where we'd be assaulted technologically, and that they knew that they didn't want their people and their offspring being exposed and overly attacked by things that eventually would be used later to enslave the very people that they're trying to keep away from. Okay? So when you call me crazy, I could be. This could all be made up, but I want you to check it out. Tell me how many Jews, how many Orthodox Jews are walking in a society where they're exposing themselves to the aerial nano, the nanoparticulates. Tell me where they're eating the foods that you and I eat. Even the very schools in these communities have yeshivas, universities that only host their own people and their own children. They're not even going to allow strangers to teach your children, but you and I do. It's funny that before the 1950s, where desegregation was perpetuated, where people had wanted to start to share schools with others that hated them, that the brown community, the melanated community in the Americas was actually thriving, had created many different societies where they were thriving. The children were healthy. There wasn't any autism. The children were doing well. There wasn't any crime. Marriages where males, brown men and women were doing amazing, such beauty, such connection, such community. And it wasn't until after the 1950s where it was a perpetuation of some beings, the same beings that I say that come from societies where they protect their own people, the Darrows, big up to the Darrows. You protect your own people. You were the ones who pushed the civil rights movement. You were the ones leading it, saying brown people need to start to cohabitate and move into the other communities to have the same rights and privileges as the others, even though the privileges and the rights that brown people had was perpetual and amazing. Do you know who headed these civil rights movements? The same people that I just talked about who create communities where they don't commingle with you and I. They were the ones who headed it. I wonder why. Remember, I told you, I think these beings inevitably came from another place. I think they're um, I think they may be interdimensional, but I definitely know that they're definitely interterrestrials. They came from under. Where they come from in Ukraine, they actually come from underneath the ground. There's actually tunnels, and they talk about this in many of the old archives still to this day. So they actually come from a subterranean world, okay, in those areas. That's where they come from. So I think there's some sort of interdimensional or they're definitely inner earth beings, okay? So when you have these brown melanated people now being exposed to a group of hostiles, okay, now they have access to your blood because now you don't. cared to go to hospitals where you're going to people who look like you, have same national connection, same DNA. You're now allowing a group of others to have access to your blood, and they're utilizing your blood and your DNA to be able to genetically create bioweapons specifically and tailored towards you. It didn't happen before. We have nefarious groups of intergalactic, interdimensionals, or inner Earth beings that have come onto surface, that have dominated the Earth plane, and have created ways to harvest and to utilize the Earth soul beings to perpetuate their own life force. Okay. So now you've been exposed. Now you're intermingling with nefarious beings that don't like you, that are utilizing your organs, your children's organs, your afterbirth to be able to perpetuate themselves. Because remember, they're intergalactic, they may be interdimensional, they're not from this plane of existence. So this kind of bioenergetic field is not good for them. Your biosphere, your bodies were good for this environment if you're harmonic. So that means you come from here. You come from a plane of existence that is harmonic with the weather, the temperature, you have protection because a lot of times your skin helps to protect you from gamma radiation and other forms of radionic frequencies. So you have these protection qualities. But if you have these nefarious, alien, demonic, satanic beings that come from the subterranean world that don't have this protection, they need it from you. So they have to mine you. In order to mine you, they need access to you. In order to get access to you, they have to create a whole scheme to make you feel like you need to be around them, though they don't want to be around you. Okay. So now they've been mining gold, melanin gold, which is higher than the gold on the black market right now. Okay. Harvesting the organs, putting hits, paying coppers and other political and social civil servants $50,000-$60,000 a hit, because each of the organs in your body, like one kidney could be $60,000, your heart is definitely over $300,000, sometimes $100,000. Your afterbirth has got super stem cells. All these people going into Mexico for stem cells, where do you think they're getting the stem cells from, y'all? Where are they getting them from? You're being mined. Now, why does this matter? Because you have this nefarious interterrestrial beings that have taken over the planet. They're satanic and Babylonian in nature. Okay, they're very vampiric. That's why they like to perpetuate vampires, because that's what they do. They drain your blood, which is basically harvesting your organs. Okay, they use Africa as a harvesting network. Africa is just a harvesting world for them, where they can harvest the organs quicker and take on some of that blood and that protection, so that they can perpetuate themselves and they can live longer in an environment that it was not intended for those type of beings to live on surface. Now that we are going to reset, which is a type of timer that happens in this holographic world. We're living on what you perceive to be as Earth, but literally it's a holographic Earth. Nibiru is actually Terra. It's Earth Tiamat. What you perceive to be Earth, it mimics what Nibiru is on its surface. It's terraformed this holographic system to be reminiscent of what ancient Nibiru looks like, which you call the Anunnaki world. Okay, Planet X, the brown dwarf, whatever you call it, the dark star. Okay, the Death Star. It just mimics it. So we're living on a terraformed, terraformed planetoid looking sphere, where we're coexisting with these type of nefarious beings. Now, whether the beings had always been here or not, they're here now. And they've been here long enough where they've been able to control the narrative and be able to harvest and to live and exist without any sort of resistance. Because again, they're using alien technology, which probably they may have came with themselves from their interdimensional worlds. I don't know. We could probably find that out from other beings, but it doesn't matter. They're controlling the entirety of what you perceive to be the planet. Okay. I would say, just before we even go into the whole Wakanda thing, is that in order for you to kind of protect yourself at this point, I would make sure that you keep your organs to yourself, stop getting tattoos, stop interfacing and buying products from beings that don't look like you. I would not buy hair products if on the top of the hair product list, somebody, and even if they look like you got to find out who they're married to, because they might be a coon and they basically are putting a black face on a product to make you trust it. And meanwhile, they're married to a whole nother species of beings that have nefarious thoughts about you, biases, so that they create products that are harmful and lower your immune system. Okay. If you can't make it, then only purchase from those who have a likenesses to you and same themed consciousness as you. That's just my suggestion. I'm not telling you to to boycott anything, because listen to the world, boycott. I'm not telling you to boycott anything. What I'm suggesting that everyone does, that's the way I think, is stop engaging and giving fiat in exchange, frequency wise, and exchange of energy to beings that have nefarious agendas rolling out to cause harm to you and yours. Okay. Did my thing stop, y'all? Hold on. Okay. I would make everything. I wouldn't trust them. Okay. Because they have a goal inside. Now we're going to a reset. We got the pole shift on and popping, y'all. This is what happens inside this holographic system once we come to an end. Okay. Big up to Brother Panic. I got it. Occult lectures is on here. That's Panic's people. I want to say, if you can get a chance, occult lectures, if you can put a link, if you're selling his old lectures, I don't care what you're doing. I think many of you need to go to occult lectures where Panic had given a host of clues and directions and how to be able to come when you come out and you transcend out of the physical body to be able to escape this holographic system. He had some great clues, great information. I mean, a wealth of information, and never got the credit he deserved. Even I gave him issues, and this being was sent here to specifically give pieces of the yellow brick road to everyone to assist them to be able to know how to ascend outside of this plane of control and vampiric system. Okay, so I don't know if Colt Electrics, if you're there, please put a link, or someone put a link to their channel. It's very important. I think if you're selling his lectures, I would definitely support it. I think the work that he did is phenomenal. No one has ever done it. And I think that would be helpful for some of the people that I'm talking to here that feel a little hopeless. Maybe they need a little guidance. I think he absolutely, like I said, even big up to Marie, who was still listening to some of his lectures that are very relevant to this day. So if you could put a link, or someone could put a link for occult lectures, I really appreciate it. However you get his lectures, please do it. They're long. If you have a short attention span, if you just watch TikTok all day, you can't even read a book for 5 minutes. You aren't qualified to listen to Panic. Panic is for the grown folk. You know what I say? Remember when my dad used to say that. He was like, one day you're gonna love jazz music. He's like, you're gonna love it, and it's just gone, but it's gonna be, you get to a certain age where you could appreciate it. Panic is for the grown folk. He's for the folk who don't need a chaser to actually take down the elixir. Okay. You don't need a preamp and you don't need a chaser. That's Panic. Okay. He has some great information discussing a lot of things I'm speaking about right now. So, okay, so what I will say, suggestion also as we go forward, stop buying hair products. If you look at the people at the top CEOs, if they're coming from the Daros, I wouldn't purchase a thing. The Daros have only one goal in mind, is to create a whole world of Satanism. Okay, that's why they promote pornography. If you're watching pornography or OnlyFans, I'm telling you that you need to stop, because the Daros are the only ones benefiting from it, and it's able to fund their nefarious behavior. So if you're watching OnlyFans, OnlyFans is a site that funds the Daros. Okay, this is you don't have to you don't have to boycott anything. Don't boycott. Just only engage with those who engage, who rock with you. So if they rock with you, you have that fairy energy, only rock with those who are in alignment with that. It's not even about color at that point, it's frequency. So if something rocks with you, you rock with it. But when you have beings that are heading companies, music companies, and all of those who listen to music, with those who took over the music to destroy your children's minds and souls, stop purchasing, listening to music that is being purposefully taken over and created to destroy yourself and your children's consciousness. Okay. When hip hop, I'm a hip hop head, y'all. I'm from New York. There isn't any stronger hip hop community than base level Generation X New Yorkers. Hip hop was enlightening. It brought our consciousness to a higher level. We had self-control, self-mastery, we had self-esteem. We wanted to do better for our communities. We wanted to build communities for our families. We felt connected to our bloodlines. We had such pride in ourselves. Hip hop became rap music and it destroyed everything that was created in that generation. Rap music is the mumble rap of people whose minds are destroyed by the drugs and alcohol that was perpetuated when it turned into death music. Okay? Hip hop is the music of people that look like turds that are flushed down a toilet and came back up because they can't be flushed down properly. Okay. When you're listening to people who are sitting there on their platforms and they call themselves artists and they're not speaking up against what's happening in Congo, in Somali, in Sudan, in Yemen, over in Ethiopia, if they're not speaking to the dirt and the darkness that's happening in the United States of young youth that are being destroyed and not perpetually growing and evolving, these are demons. They are ran by the satanic cabal. You cannot connect yourself to their music, and you need to pull away from financing them. If they do not perpetuate brightness, beauty, up leveling, growth, harmony, self mastery, self growth, you don't need to support them. Keep your children from purchasing things that are from people that are perpetuating satanic, ritualistic, abusive behavior. These are from the Babylonians that came from underneath the earth that are sitting there doing well in all of the financial market, all of the social media that control. They control all the narrative. Stop perpetuating their wealth. The only way that they can exist and keep power is if you keep supporting them. They created a whole fiat system. The whole fiat system was created in order to perpetuate them. You're basically feeding them. When you watch her OnlyFans, and I know, big up to the young lady, there was a young lady who said their OnlyFan, there's a only, can you guys confirm this? Because I don't know. She said this. The OnlyFan, she's so sweet. She explained this to me. She said it's not only sexual stuff on OnlyFans. Is that true, y'all? Can someone confirm that? Because I don't know. I don't watch OnlyFans. I know the OnlyFans girls. So is there other stuff that's going on OnlyFans? They do like sell things and products, do they? Can someone tell me? Because Asia said yes. Like, I just want to confirm this, y'all. I want to find out if that's true. Because if that's true, hold on. Oh, they do. Okay. Okay. So they sell, okay, so what I would say for the OnlyFans people, maybe there needs to be another site that's created by a more conscious community, where an app can be thrown out there. Maybe someone can manifest that. Can someone, maybe a couple of you can dream that up. Some of you are super manifestors. Maybe manifest a site that's better, that's not ran by the Daros. The Daros are benefiting from your hard work. And I definitely love the fact that you can create your own income, your own way of creating a frequency of bringing, abundance and comfort to your family. Maybe someone can, hold on. Okay, there's stuff on there. Okay, we might want to use a different site. I don't know, I don't know how many people are not doing sexual things on there, but maybe we should manifest a different site for them to go to because it's funding the Daros. Okay. Anything that funds demons, you take some karma in. And I talked about the fact that the Nigerians had told me that one of the things that why people kind of feel upset is that they see that these nefarious beings are doing things, and they don't see a consequence because they're not real. A lot of these beings are holographic, they're hybridized, they aren't soul-based. Soul-based beings will always have consequence for what they do. Soulless beings haven't any consequence because they're not connected to source. The only time you get a consequence for poor behavior is if you're connected to source. If you see beings that are perpetuating dark behavior, dastardly behavior, nefarious behavior, and there isn't a consequence because they're not real. Okay, so you're following the lead of beings that are not real. Ornorus Montura. Oh, I love your name. Omoris Montura. I love your name. Thank you for my donation. Fervent gratitude. I need to send you something by mail. Love you, beautiful soul you are. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you. I love your name. That's so beautiful. Um, yeah, stop supporting them. Okay, so let's go to the pole shift and Nigerians and Wakanda. What's happening now, y'all, is they are unable to find some of these beings. I know that your Imperial Master Orange One is trying to set forth cyborgs and under the guise of the National Guard to find these other beings, to try to locate them. Remember, these beings coming off of Nibiru have even more advanced technology. That's why when they try to shoot down the orbs, their drones try to shoot down the orbs, they literally were unable to do so, and the orb would just deactivate the drone. The technology that the Dark Kabbalists have on Earth is higher, but it isn't higher than what the Nibirians have. So if you're worried about them being harmed or found, I mean, they're soldiers. I'm not saying that all are going to be able to, there won't be any casualties, but the Nibirians are quite equipped to deal with the nefariousness on the planet. They are here. They have cigar ships that have been seen. They're being shot down in plasma orbs. They're coming down on surface. They're helping the sleeper cells. So we have a support, almost like a support system that's coming on the planet to allow for a proper exodus off of the planet. Okay, so exodus is coming close. We have the exodus, which comes with the before reset or around the reset. I generally think that the exodus is coming generally around the time where right before the full-on pole shift shifts. Now, from what I understand is even in the death process, when people transcend their body right now, they aren't allowed to take on new bodily forms. Reincarnation is being held to come to a halt. How do you know that this is happening? Is that there's a lower birth rate. So you know, in itself, if you take it on a metaphysical level, you'll say, okay, the birth rate is dropping because of the Kukarachi shots, a host of other things, people choosing to opt out. But it's deeper than that. It's not only that they're opting out for giving birth to new life, it's that there is a stoppage of reincarnation in the etheric and the astral realms because we're about to go through reset and then pole shift. And then there's a whole nother cycle that's going to happen after then. And I told you, I personally know that part of the cycle that's happening after the pole shift, the cycle that's coming up is more android based. So people will be more mechanical. They'll be less organic. You're going to see less bioorganic beings in the next reset, after the reset, than now. So we have more biological beings in this um, cycle. The next cycle will be more bioborgs, people that have biology, some biological form connected to technology. That's why you see a lot of technology that's being pushed right now. So with the Nibirians coming up, remember I talk about the Exodus sites, that your DNA allows you qualification if you have access to particular points of Exodus, your transporter sites, okay? Just like, at the point in reference where you're about to be extracted from this plane of existence, I think what they're trying to do, the nefarious ones, is they're trying to make it very difficult for the others to support it. So really in itself, the Nibirians aren't here necessarily to stop what the beings here are doing. This isn't the world we're supposed to stay in. Okay. This is more about transport out, comfortable transport out, meaning that they're going to guard and protect the sites of Exodus. This is my opinion. This is not necessarily what they said. I'm surmising that from the behavior and some of the interface I'm having with them. So it's basically like making sure that the points and references of transportation of Exodus are open and accessible. Okay, because if it's according to the nefarious ones, they're trying to disqualify you from being able to leave. And I've talked about some of the disqualification. That's what this whole movement was for. The trans movement was really a perpetuation because it disqualifies you from having the ability to to be able to exodus, at least in this cycle. Why? Is because if you reject the form of what you are biologically, you automatically disqualify yourself. You disqualify yourself if you kill people. You disqualify if you do things to kill people. You disqualify yourself if your service to self. You disqualify yourself if you're harmful to animals and plants and you do it without a level. When we're talking about harmful, I'm just saying like with a level of nefariousness, like you just destroy animals, you kill animals, a lot of people who hunt and eating the game is not their goal. This is my opinion. This one's my opinion. I actually think hunters who kill for sport and game, those are the ones who are disqualified because that's a form of abuse of nature, biological, organic, against their will. Okay, it isn't for. I think to a greater degree, I think the murder of animals, the way that is done, is just heinous. I doubt that we biologically were like that. And plants as well. I think plants are just as sentient as animals. I think we give them more. Um, we give more credence to an animal feeling pain, but plants feel and exist with a level of consciousness, and they do feel pain and sadness. If you ever listened to some of the people who record the sounds when a plant is dying or another one's dying next to it, how trees act when one is dying or being cut down, there's such sadness, such the residue, the frequency, the vibratory sounds are very interesting, very low. Okay, so we have that going on. So um, the Nigerians are a form of protection for transport. And I actually think the scouts here, like the Bigfoot, the Yeti, Sasquatch, they probably were scouts themselves. Might have been long-term scouts set here or watching over this realm, kind of reporting back, just because of how the Sasquatch are set up. Like they're usually by themselves, they're separated, usually male-based, usually males. Makes me think that they were scouts. Okay, so I think that in itself, that's just my thing. There might be some form of also assistance from other groups. Now, when I say Nibiru is just one particular phenotype, I wouldn't exclude that there aren't other groups that are coming in. So when I say this, I think people get upset because they only feel like I talk about Nibiru being the only group, galactic group coming in. I doubt it. It's just the one that I know about and I'm connected to. So I wouldn't, if you're afraid that you're feeling like you're not connected to the Nigerians, you feel like the Anunnaki are terrible, evil, you feel a level of fear, there's a reason for that. And I don't think you should go against what's in your gut. But also, I want you to seek a little further because there might be people online who are speaking about the others here that are connected to other groups. Okay? I don't doubt it. What I speak to as I speak to those I'm connected to. So it would make sense. Okay. So I wouldn't feel left out. If you feel left out or a certain way, there are other people online who definitely probably have intel on their connection and the information and the intel that they're getting from their beings coming in. Okay. Nibiru is one of probably many. I wouldn't assume all the ships could be them. I just know that Planet X, Nibiru, that is all connected to specific beings that I'm connected to, and those usually connected to my channel are connected to. Okay. Um, the pole shift is fully on and popping. So as we have all of these things happening, you're having multiple earthquakes. You have the Cascadia plates moving. You have a lot of subterranean volcanoes coming alive. You do know that one of the signs that we know the full-on pole shift happens is that, and this is from Rudolph of Germany, the tall white alien, which I've also referenced. He's 1000% always on point. I always give him props because I've known Rudolph for over 10 years online, and he is the most, I've never seen someone with a full, like you're like someone who shoots balls all the time and you have 100% percentage. He's that. Okay. He's talked about like the fact that right before the full-on pole shift, you'll know it's coming because World War III will be announced. Okay. That is one of his signs. One of my signs that the full-on pole shift comes is from Edgar Casey. And he talks about Mount Pelée, which is from my island, Martinique, and also what's the other one? Oh gosh, what's the other one? Oh my, there's another one. I forgot it. It's another volcano. Mount Etna, I think it's Etna. They go off simultaneously. Once Mount Pelée, because remember I talked about Martinique, that volcano had gone up many years ago and had many family members who died like in the 30s, many years ago. But it has been rumbling and a lot of activity is happening. So once those two volcanoes go off simultaneously, that means the pole shift is on and popping fully. That means it's a full flip. Okay. So I do know that that is the way that I will gear when that happens. Whether I'll be in this realm or not, that's how I'll be able to know if that happens. Okay. So I would just say this. I would keep ones clean. The Wakanda is here, meaning that beings that are like, if you've not watched Black Panther, go watch. Why do I say they're like the Wakandans? Because the technology they have is off the chain. They have technology that departicleizes people. That's why the cops were telling them to be careful, certain people. They have technology that cloaks them. They have all the technology that you see in Wakanda. I actually think Wakanda was a detailed blueprint of the Niburians that come in with the technology when they come on site. Okay, so you aren't always going to see them. Just like Predator had the ability to cloak itself and be able to view people, they have that. That's also why I think Willy Wonka and his League of Doom are spraying certain particular metals in the air so that they can see the ships that are there cloaking themselves. I think that's a way to decloak certain ships so that they can monitor them or to survey them. Okay. So I hope this was helpful today. I'm going to be on Zoom tonight. I apologize for being all over the place. I hope it was helpful. Big up to the Anunnaki, the Niburians that are on land, Wakanda forever. You know, I have a crush on the Monkey Man. Yeah. Anyway, that's like my thing. Um, Wakanda forever. Um, and it's gonna be interesting to see how Trump handles all of the national androids, Bioborg, uh guards that he's let loose in all the urban areas. And take a look, y'all. Keep the lookout for the Asiatic brown males that they're going to keep showing you are doing weird things. That is because that's the imagery that they're going to show you, and they're trying to make you look at them a certain way. But I almost feel like those images are actually Nigerians that they took pictures of, and they're just showing it to the others. I don't even know if that's for us. That might be for them. Anyway, yo, so I hope it's helpful. I'm gonna be on Zoom tonight, 9 p.m. I gotta go cook dinner because I'm trying to be a decent mother. Okay. I still have to do my duties. As a mama bear. Okay. So I hope everybody's well. If you have any opinions, if you have any shares, I'm always open for you sharing it. Be respectful. You may not agree with me. You may have your own shares. You may have, maybe you're in contact with other beings. Are you in contact with the Lyrians? The cats were migrating. Are you in contact with the Greys? Are you in contact with Draconians? Are you having contact with the wolf beings that obviously I think we got a message from last live? Share the messages. It's not about exclusivity. I talk about what I'm exposed to. So, but I am open and receptive to other people's shares about the beings and the contact that they're having as well. So, do so. And all of those who wrote me emails, I do read the emails at a very slow pace because I have a life once I get off. But I am trying to read your emails. So do not feel as if I'm not responding. I probably won't respond. I may respond a on the actual I may respond on um like on a video. I'm just slow at reading emails. I get a lot and I really appreciate you taking your time out. But just be patient with me. And it isn't that I'm not reading, it's just that I probably read it at a slower pace. Mohawk, yeah, I am under trust. Love, wholeness, power, Florbrone. You're deeply valued. Oh, thank you, my love. I love it. You have such beautiful names. It's a beautiful name. Thank you. Um, and I think that's it. So also, we have a C star who's opened up a um an Etsy account. She makes like the sweetest, and this is what I say, support those who support things that you support. She's Delma Shea, you see her, she's one of the mods. She creates, so for those mommies, I like it, or people who like like small little figurine things. She makes like doll houses. She makes little figurines and little pieces for like little people, little figurines, little doll houses, melanated things. Uh little fig did I say that already? Little figurines, little parts. It's so beautiful. So do support her on Etsy. Delma Shea, can you put your store on there? I support those who support us. So definitely Delma Shea, you should definitely support them. Also, you have Oracle who makes a lot of great videos on her channel. She's one of our mods. You notice that the mods are really in alignment and what we're in alignment with. And I think as a melanated mom, if you want little doll sets, if you want little doll houses, I know some of you still celebrate the holidays or birthdays. Go to some of the wonderful people who do these things, these beautiful things. She's so talented. I mean, we watch sometimes on Zoom, and I'm like in amazement she can make these little figurines. So, Delma Shea, please put your store in the chat. Please support our mods. They come in here, they fight for us on our behalf, they protect the channel. And then Oracle has a beautiful channel with music and hip hop that is reminiscent of the times we're going through. Very melanin friendly, very woman empowering. So do support her channel as well. So, like I said, we need to start connecting to those who are connected to us and who are reminiscent of the energy that we're trying to perpetuate. We need to be the change we want to see in the world. And by doing that, by supporting people in the frequency and the mindset, and also who come from same gene pools, we are perpetuating the same thing as others do. So when people tell you, oh, why are you saying not to shop here? It's not that. It's just that if you see the ones who are successful on this planet, and you see how they're being successful, a lot of them are supporting each other. And there's nothing wrong with it, but we should do the same. Okay. So I don't know if Delma Shea did she leave yet? Well, if anybody has Delma Shea's channel on Etsy, please put it in. That'd be great. Okay, so thank you everyone. Wakanda forever. So corny. My daughters see that they that would be insane. Do get a chance to watch Panther again because the technology is it's very interesting. I think we're going to see some things that are very reminiscent of what we're going to see in the next couple weeks. And they're going to say something else. They're going to say transponders are going down, things like that. Don't believe the hype. Don't believe the hype. It's probably Wakanda technology that the Nigerians are bringing to stick them with it. Okay. So it'll be interesting to see what happens the next couple days. I wish everybody well. Thank you very much for supporting the channel. Please put a like on the video if you up for the shenanigans and you like the information that I bring. Okay. So love you. Take care. Have a great Sunday. And I'll see some of you tonight on Zoom. Peace. Wakanda forever.